And we as the leadership, and allow me to say it emphatically clear, that we are prepared to surrender ourselves before we surrender this citizens movement.
Anenge asingatevedzi kwadura ati tasa.
Vanhu vakanguva vachema kudzoka kuMDC yavo ende havachati zvimazita zvose zvivana Triple C zvinana MDC. Vanhu vanoda the original MDC but with the new leader. Havadi Monzora, havadi Chamisi.
Now this is the Free Talk. So Zimbabweans, we face a festive season, and most people have been saying that this festive season is going to be one of the worst in their lives because they are not able to provide just basics for their children as the economy tightens. And of concern to many people is the political situation in the country and how 2026 is going to be looking like and how it's going to affect their lives going forward, especially service provision in areas like health, in areas especially on health, education, and even just general well-being. And we're going to be discussing this and many other issues on this, the Free Talk, in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom. And I, your host as usual, Dara B. But before we go to the break, please just take a moment to press the subscribe button so that you enable us to continue doing the work that we do here on Heart and Soul TV and radio. Now join me after this break as I introduce to you my guest for this final episode of this year. Welcome back to the Free Talk in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom. This is your show where we ask the questions, so what? Where we ask you to care about your country and what is happening in its backyard. Now, for us to be able to discuss the issues that sit on your hearts and that affect and speak to your health, your education, and the future of your children and yourself, on this, the Free Talk in proud partnership, Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom, is none other than Ostalos Siziba. Now, Ostalos Siziba is a scholar, an academic, a political leader in his own right, and a young person who is committed to the country, to the welfare of this country. Now, thank you very much, Ostalos, for joining us on this, the Free Talk.
Thank you very much.
Ostalos, let's look at the people. I mean, let's just have a helicopter view of 2025 as a year and what it meant to you as a person and to the people of Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much, Blessed. I think that 2025 has been a very tough year for an ordinary average Zimbabwean, starting with the crisis that visited our country in the early days of this year, the deepening crisis of inequality. We think that the biggest crisis in this country is the gap between the rich and the poor. It has widened in the year. It has been demonstrated by statistics that has been captured by government agencies, the Ministry of Finance, and the different agencies of government to confirm that those who are poor have been entrenched in terms of poverty, and those that are rich have become more richer. So that gap is the reason why some of us think that this country is in a crisis. To see this is the standards of living. Most of Zimbabweans are living in US less than $2 a day. The crisis in the health sector has also been another significant challenge that Zimbabweans have been facing. Look at the infant mortality rate, the number of people dying in our hospitals. The decay of the social fabric has been the highlight of the crisis in the country. But also, all this crisis, from the economy to the social collapse of the social service sector, has all been exacerbated by the decay of the political. The 2025 year has been a year where we have seen entrenchment of authoritarianism in our country. We've seen many people falling prey of being political victims of political violence and the attack on the institutions of democracy in our country, particularly institutions of the state. We think that Parliament in this year was more rendered to be incapable of executing its primary constitutional duty, which is to hold the executive to account. How did we see this? We saw this through the Ministry of Finance consistently borrowing outside parliamentary approval. The ballooning of the domestic and external debt in this country was all happening because of quasi-fiscal activities within the Ministry of Finance. Secondly, you saw that there was a celebration about the interchange road that was built in Mbuzi roundabout. But Mthuli Ncube goes to parliament and says that we went on to borrow money without parliamentary approval, in breach of the constitution, in breach of the Public Management Act of this country. So basically rendering parliament useless in terms of exercising its constitutional duty, which is to hold the executive to account. But also in the political, we have also seen how the political question within the ruling establishment has become a crisis for the political of the country. You see that the resolution of ZANU-PF say we are amputating the constitution has had a bearing on the politics of this country. How is that showing a bearing? In our view is that everything in the country has collapsed to focus on an attempt to criminally, illegally extend the term of office, whether for parliament, for the executive and for council, without the legal processes, because the constitution of the country is very clear. If there were interest to amend the constitution of this country, by now we would have been talking about going to the first referendum to hear what the ordinary people want. So the problem with that particular process, which has engulfed the political climate in this country for the past 12 months, is that it sets our country into the path of uncertainty. So we've all been living in a cloud of uncertainty as a people. What is going to happen? When is the next election in this country? Societies function on the basis of that certainty. That you know that all countries, whether fascist, democratic or not, you know when is the next election in Rwanda. You know when is the next election in Lusaka. You know when is the next election in South Africa. That gives that country certainty. But 2025 for us in Zimbabwe has been different politically, because we've all been clouded in this cynicism of waiting to say what is going to happen to our country. So we think that that is the challenge. So the challenge is social, the challenge is economic, but all this is born out of the collapse of the political, the collapse of the social contract. This country is being governed without a social contract. There is no relationship between those who govern and those that are being governed. And 2025 has shown that, because to the extent that the standards that were expected of this country's leadership have gone beyond what is normal. That's why you see that some of us think that it's been the worst year in the history of our country.
So I let you have that long opening so that you can establish your case. Now, let us test some of the things that you're talking about. You say that there's a collapse of the political in this country, in Zimbabwe. Some people have actually squarely blamed you, Ostalos, sitting in the opposition, or what you call the alternative. you brought a vehicle called the Triple C, and you made people believe, and people elected a political vehicle called the Triple C. And in essence, what the opposition does is to balance out so that you don't go into that crisis that you're talking about. Your political entity failed the people. In fact, they accuse you of ditching them midway after having trusted you. Now, what is your response to that?
Look, Zimbabwe is not a normal country. We are not living in normal times as a people. We formed the Triple C, founded the Triple C after an extensive consultation with the people, went into an election. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission pronounced results which we did not agree with, but not just us as a political organization, but these results were disputed by all observer missions from SADC, African Union, the EU, and so forth. So that is the genesis of the crisis in the country, is that the assumption of power by ZANU-PF government happened without the mandate of the people. So as a people, all of us, regardless of the political standing, were robbed of our constitutional duty to elect the leaders of our choice, which was the central agenda of the liberation struggle, what was called universal suffrage, for black people to be able to choose leaders of their choice via the power of the ballot.
But people, Ostalos, people chose you. People chose you. You were elected. People chose the leaders of their choice in the Triple C. You won in Bulawayo, you won in Harare, you had a mayor in Masvingo and stuff like that. People were not denied an opportunity to choose. They chose you, but you let them down. Can you address that issue?
We never let our people down. The Triple C was hijacked. We are a democratic organization. That's why we exhausted all legal and democratic processes to protect that organization, because the Triple C as an entity is a legal creature. It is the creature of the law. It was created in accordance to the laws of creating a political party in this country. Therefore, that's why all disputes were taken to the courts. And it became very clear to all Zimbabweans and right-thinking citizens beyond our borders the challenge we have with the judiciary in this country. Because we were elected to go into parliament. The Speaker of Parliament takes a letter from a street kid, makes it of legal standing, removes elected members of parliament. We knew the intention and objective. It was to amputate the organization, to disenfranchise Zimbabweans, because the Triple C was not our political party. It was a vehicle for ordinary average Zimbabwean to find political expression. So the biggest challenge and the assault that we faced as an organization is not just an assault to us as individual leaders of that organization. It's an assault to democracy. It's an assault to ordinary Zimbabwean, to which we all attempted to the best of our abilities to respond. It is for that reason why we left that organization, because we knew that it is now a vehicle to advance ZANU-PF's interests. And the central agenda was to create a de facto one-party state, which has been the intention of Harare. It has always been to create a de facto one-party state. We refuse to be part and parcel of that. We had an easier route, blessed, that were given after the 2023 election, which was to endorse the regime in Harare, which was to capitulate and become part and parcel of the choir. We had that invitation as the Triple C. We refused because we know the intention and objective of our organization.
Who invited you?
It is the ruling establishment.
Who in particular?
Is the platform for us to join Pollard. That was pronounced by the spokesperson of ZANU-PF. It was pronounced by ZANU-PF's leadership in its different ranks and file in public to say, we're extending the invitation for you, but you have to come and join us, Pollard. We said we can't join Pollard because to us, it is a sign of capitulation. But we knew the cost. The cost was that we're going to lose members of parliament. The cost was that we're going to have our mayors removed from council. But that is the nature of any struggle. A struggle like we are doing is not a short-term struggle. It's a protected struggle, meaning that is long, it is winding, it is difficult. So we knew that the opportunity we were being given is elite capture. That individuals, President Chamisa was promised security, blue lights as the leader of the opposition. But our struggle and intention is not to be in parliament as political elites without the ordinary people. So we knew that that will save us, but it will not save the ordinary
But
people.
your people are still in parliament, Ostalos. And when you say that you are not there to be in parliament, you still have members of parliament who are loyal or who still call themselves people who are for the alternative and they believe in what you believe in. They're still in parliament.
So those people, to clarify, so that there is no confusion around members of parliament that are progressive within that August House. When we had a crisis of the post-2023 election, we handed over the curatorship of the CCC into the administrative leadership of Jameson Timber. Clearly because we had taken a political decision to leave the CCC, because it was clear up to this very day that it is no longer the vehicle of choice to take us where we're going. So we take that political decision. But because there were members of parliament that were not recalled, that remained there, that identified with the democratic process in this country, that's one. Number two, there were matters that were in court that needed to be concluded. There were matters within regional bodies like SADC and the African Union that needed to be concluded. Despite that, we had taken a political decision to exit from the CCC. But the CCC, like I said, is a legal creature. We had to hand it over to the administrative bureau of Honorable Timber and the team of 10 to curate, which is basically to conclude the chapter, which is the business in parliament, which is the business in courts, which is the business in the region. So that remains the responsibility of that bureau. And that is the reason why some of us are where we are. We exited the CCC. We don't speak on behalf of the CCC. We have no business with the CCC. The CCC, as led by Jameson Timber, was given his mandate for that chapter to be concluded, primarily because the business of the CCC should not affect us going into the future. And when I mean business of the CCC, I mean the legal and administrative status of that CCC. It has to be curated. It has to be closed. It remains part of our past, but it is not part of the future.
Now let us talk about this moving into the future, Ostalos. You have been at the center of holding certain mobilization, if you want to call it. You together with Amos Chibaya, and some of your former members who were also recalled have accused you and Chibaya of trying to put wedges between them and your president, Nelson Chamisa, and also trying to push them out of what you call the new. And in particular, I talk of Prince Tubeko, who has been vocal on social media. Why are you doing this? Why are you creating acrimony as you try to step into the new when you talk about being peace-loving, all-encompassing?
Thank you very much. Look, I've never assumed the role to speak on behalf of individuals. I speak on behalf of the democratic alternative. And I'll re-articulate our position is that first and foremost, we have articulated the position that we believe on the unity of the progressive forces in our country as we fight against dictatorship. I don't think that we are preoccupied by issues around individuals. It happens when you're in politics. People can raise concerns around the operations and characters of the individuals, but those will never be the characteristics and characterization of the leadership collective and the vehicle of change that we are part and parcel of. It is only normal in an organization that we're not going to agree at all the time. But the good thing about the democratic alternative is that we've always believed in the culture of debate and superior logic and subject such political debates into the hands of the people. That's why we go to process for the people to express themselves around the leadership questions of the organization. And there are the platforms that we resolve issues. But also, it is natural in a democracy and in an organization like the one we belong to. The democratic movement is a mass organization. So that mass organization carries different aspirations of the people. There are people who came from the church, from the students' union, from the civic society, from the labor, and so forth. So these people carry their different persuasions, but we come together on the basis of agreement on freedom, on democracy, and change in our country. That is what binds us together. I go to the Apostolic Faith Mission of Africa, some go to the Roman Catholic, some go to the Seventh Adventist. But we all converge not on the basis of our religious persuasion, but on the basis of common destiny, which is democracy, which is freedom. So it is only natural. I support Highlanders. Fazai supports Dynamos. So we always have differences on soccer team to support, but the common vision and common agenda is change. So we don't think that we can be consumed in the propaganda by our opponents to say whenever we might hold differences, it means that there are problems within the democratic opposition. But also, you must know the good thing about us is that we don't go to the extent of punishing people that differ with us. You have to win and convince us and ordinary people through superior logic. And the people are going to decide on what happens to the organization on the basis of people's proposition and their superior ideas. So we are solid where we stand. We are content about the direction that we're taking. But also we are cognizant of the fact that for the past 2 decades in democratic trenches, there are lessons we must carry. There are things that we might not have done well. There are things that we have done well. And this moment has been a moment of reflection. So when you hear us saying we're entering the shadows of the new alternative, we carry with ourselves experiences from the past, lessons from the past, things that we know should not be part and parcel of the future, but that we know that are lessons. So to us, differences, challenges, we owe that to teach us. That's the instructive nature of history, to teach us to say, going forward, these things must not happen. So issues around how do we deal with our own internal contradictions within the organization? How do we have a solid organization to be an alternative to ZANU-PF? But also more importantly, some of the things that have also emerged from the people is to say, how do we robustly create solid policy alternative to the current establishment? That's why we are big on foreign policy, big on economic agenda, transformation projections, and social transformation program of action. Because we want to show ordinary average Zimbabweans who have so many questions, including the one that you have just asked, to say, when we come, how do we see that this is a credible alternative to take Zimbabwe forward?
You keep saying we, Stylus. Who is we? Because we know that you've left the Triple C. Your president, Nelson Chamisa, has announced that he's taking a step back from the Triple C. I mean, he left the Triple C, not taking a step back. And he said he remains in national politics. And people, there's confusion. So when you say we, what organization are you talking about?
Look, at the vehicles that we've always used since 1999 have always been vehicle to express what we call we. And we is not the political vehicle and the political organization. We has always and will always remain the National Democratic Revolution. Because the National Democratic Revolution makes us who we are, the progressive forces.
But Ostalo, who gives you the authority to speak on we? Because there's no structure that allows you to speak on behalf of those people. Because probably those people don't want you to speak to deal with those issues. So you must be drawing your power from somewhere to say we.
We take that power, Pule, like I said, we take it from the mandate we are given as ordinary average Zimbabwean in executing the democratic revolution. In executing the democratic struggle for the past 2 decades, we form political organizations as vehicles. An organization is a vehicle to achieve the objective of the democratic project. The democratic project is what we constitute as the democratic family. That's the struggle that we've always been part of, whether it's activists, whether it's labor movement leaders, whether it's progressive forces. That is what constitute ourselves. It is every ordinary average Zimbabweans that continue to affirm this mandate. And to test this mandate, Pule, you can go to the length and breadth of our country. We continue to convene and converse with ordinary average Zimbabweans as a way to ensure that we achieve the objective that I've articulated, which is democracy. But to do that now, we do it through the power of the election or through the electoral process. Now, to go into an electoral process, we need a political vehicle, which many mistake as a platform to give us legitimacy. We don't get legitimacy from the political organization. We give legitimacy to the organization by moving as ordinary average Zimbabwean, as democratic crusaders, to use this as a platform to go into an election. That's why in 2005, when there are contradictions within the democratic movement, we had to find a political platform which became the MDCT to take us into the election of 2008. When we exited Government of National Unity, we decided to create the MDC Alliance as a vehicle for us to find electoral expression within Zimbabwe's body politic. When that vehicle was hijacked by the regime during COVID, we exited the CCC because what the regime doesn't understand, Bule, for the past 20 years is that what makes us who we are is not the political organization. It is not the political party. We form the party, but it's we, the ordinary average Zimbabwean, who form the party just like a jacket and wear it. That's why when they grabbed it and gave it to Monzo, it became a carcass. Harvest House, which was a revolutionary building, became a tuck shop, right? They went to sing in Poland, did what they could do, and all of them were consumed into the oblivion of the history of our country as political non-entities. We formed the CCC after traversing the length and breadth of our country. We gave it life. They hijacked it because they thought that once you gain the political organization in terms of its administration, its offices, you have gained the hearts of the people. We have remained, that is the mystery why President Chamisa remains the most attractive political figure in our country. Because they thought that when we take mayors, when we take members of parliament, when we take councillors, we take party color, we take symbols. They went to the extent of taking the grave of Morgan Tsvangirai. They went to the extent of claiming the mother of Morgan Tsvangirai. They went to the extent of taking victims that were butchered by the regime, made them defectors to join the regime because they thought that these people are the symbols of the democratic struggle, not knowing that what makes us who we are is our fidelity to democratic processes, and that is within the hearts of ordinary Zimbabweans. That is we.
These ordinary Zimbabweans think that you are taking them for granted. You are promising them, a utopia that you have failed to deliver over these past 20 years. And you are moving from jacket to jacket until at this point you appear jacketless.
Look, it's people who are historical. The good thing is that Zimbabweans are literate and they can read. The history of democratic process and struggles world over can be a point of instruction to give reference. How many years were the South Africans democrats that you see today? Decades of trenches with naked contact with danger were exercised by citizens in South Africa for them to have democracy in 1994. How long was the struggle for us to lift the Union Jack in 1980? So it's never a one-day wonder, which is the point that we've always made to ordinary average Zimbabweans. That when we came into this struggle, we knew that it's not a walk in the park, it's not a bed of roses, that it's not going to be a one-day wonder. President Tsvangirai will always instruct us that it's a protected struggle, meaning that it is long, it is winding, it is difficult.
And as it is long, winding, and difficult, most of your people that made household names in this are tired, appears to be tired, or they're now just showing their true colors. They are going for the money. And now people are wondering whether the opposition can be trusted. And I've read this over and over again where they say, this is your opposition, after trinkets, after money. Can they be trusted? Now, Ostalos, can you be trusted once you have your keys or your hand to the pulse of the money in this naked poverty that Zimbabwe has brought many to?
Look, one of the lessons with the intrusion that faced the democratic movement for the past 20 years is that, one, we have to invest in the ideological training and grounding of the people that we deploy in public office. Because when that consciousness escapes you and you go for trinkets over the central objective of our struggle, we know that this is a normal a thing to happen. People betray, people sidetrack. What we were taught all these years is that when you feel tired, take a time to rest and let others proceed with the struggle and we join them. We don't think the reason why Bule, with all the temptations, remember that when the recall came, these people were negotiating with us. The negotiations were not just within the organization, but was also with individuals to say, I was the deputy spokesperson of the party. They would engage to say, look, you must remain quiet and we're not going to recall you, right? It was a simple thing. I would have chosen to remain quiet. But how do you say I should be quiet when I'm the spokesperson of the organization? But also, most importantly, the International Socialist Organization that grounded some of us prepared us for such moment as when the crazy moment of Chabangu Monzora came about. We knew that the objective, Parliament has never been the destiny for the democratic movement. The station of choice for us is State House. So all right-thinking democratic members of the organization knew that the station of choice is never Parliament, it is never council. So you don't choose it above the central objective of the movement.
But you can't get to the central objective if you do not occupy council, if you do not occupy
It is without doubt. That's why we contested. We know that the intention is to be in council, is to be in Parliament, because you will have to make laws. But I'm saying that what is the station of choice? Our station of choice is to have change of government. It is not to be members of Parliament and to be councillors. Not that we would think that people should not be in Parliament and people should not be in council. We contest it, meaning that we are giving people that mandate, right? But we don't lose sight of the objective. The objective is for us to have change of government. Why? Parliament without change of the executive in the country will not do anything. If you see right now the conversation about 2030, it shows to the extent how much they know that they are going to railroad it in Parliament. So what is clear, Bule, particularly in Zimbabwe, where we have an executive tyranny, you have to have change of government and occupy the highest office of the land to effect change. Without that, everything else to us will remain futile. It doesn't mean that it's not important, but it is important because these are anchors and pillars of government. But you have to ensure that you assume absolute authority as a people so that you govern differently.
And in your path to your station of choice, you have controlled council. At one point, you had the majority in the House of Assembly in Parliament. You have been accused as a collective, as the way that you talk about, of dismal failure in performance at local authorities, resultantly in the almost amputation of service delivery in Harare, death of Bulawayo as a town. And this has happened under the watch of the cadres that you say are of alternative change. Why should they trust you then with the keys to State House?
Look, there are two fundamental problems with the running of local authorities in this country. One are external problems, the others are internal. So the first external problems that we face in our 2 decades of running council is that when Engineer Mudzuri was the mayor of Harare, he had executive powers. And ZANU-PF knew that local authorities would be assigned for the opposition to show how it is able to govern. From that time, there was a project to this very day to make sure that council is not functional by taking away powers from the Apex Councils Act and placing them in the Ministry of Local Government, to the extent that to buy toilet paper for local authority, you would need approval of local authority. I'm dramatizing the extent of control of local authority. So that is the fundamental external problems that the city faces. If you look at Bulawayo now, we've had decades of failing to complete the project to get water to the city. Why? It is not in the interest of ZANU-PF for water to be availed, because that glory will go to the opposition. It is in the interest of Harare that sewer continues to cause havoc in the city so that Harare residents will not vote for the democratic opposition. It is in the interest of the regime in Harare that there is no water, that there are potholes all over, because they will ensure that Zinara does not allocate funds. Devolution funds were only allocated this time because there was now a consensus, an agreement, and a marriage of convenience between the current leadership of the city of Harare and the ruling establishment for Geopomona project. That is only time where devolution funds were allocated to the cities. All along, there will be bureaucratic red tape and problems. When Zimbabweans voted for monies to be given across the country for cities to be run. So that's the external problems. But because of that, it does not absolve us from also solving our own problems within the city. The first one, we've acknowledged this publicly and we'll say it. Our lessons going into the future is to say, we have to look at the quality of councillors that we deploy. Ordinary Zimbabweans have never had interest in local authorities. So when we make calls for people to come and contest, it has always been a space that everyone, professionals, people who are capacitated to run the city, will shy away. We've invited citizens with capabilities to join the movement so that we are able to have quality to run our cities. If you look at our deployment policy in 2023, we were looking more on quality rather than quantity. If you look at the mayors who were deployed in cities across, with Dr. Mazorera in Kwekwe, with capable Ian Makoni in Harare, with Senator David Coulthard in Bulawayo, we had Chantel in Masvingo, a banker, we had Anna Sande, a graduate in Epworth. So we were looking at quality over quantity. ZANU-PF Mhlanga had a quantitative majority in parliament, but we had a qualitative majority because they deployed as usual octogenarians, the nanogenarians who would be sleeping after maybe drinking a cup of coffee. We were focusing on the quality of people because we knew parliament was going to be an important vehicle for our reform agenda. So if you look at the recalls, there was a design and science into the madness that Chabambo was doing. It was not just random. They were looking at the people of substance that were deployed.
Are you saying that those who are left were with no substance at all?
No, but I can confirm that those that replaced them are of no substance. So there are people who remain there who have a capacity and capability. They were not recalled for various reasons because remember, they could not recall everyone because they also needed political finance money. ZANU also didn't want a by-election. So they had targeted people that they knew that were going to reject the tomfoolery currently happening in parliament. They will replace all of them without exception, by people without substance, without character, without quality. Yes, that I can confirm. And it shows that the intention was to replace members of parliament, one with the mandate of the people, but also with the capacity to know how parliament must be run, with the capacity to take parliament back to its constitutional legislative mandate. They replaced them with singers. You see, people who are empty, vacuous, ideologically inept. Those are the people that replaced us in parliament. You can check them. You never hear them say a thing there in parliament. You see, all of them. You can go to their CVs, all of them. Listen to their rhetoric in parliament. Zero agenda for the people because they have no mandate from the people, but also they don't have the substance and capacity to talk about any legislative progress in this country. So they were replaced there to go and meet the moment that the regime has been preparing for. And what is that moment? That moment is the vote for 2030. So that's why they are there. They know they have no mandate from the people and they're going to vote for the criminal extension of the term of office of the regime because they know that after that, there's nothing for them. They are all going to swim into political oblivion. And the good thing, Bull, is that all of us will be there to witness it.
Ostalos, I want us to look at the 2030 agenda that you keep talking to and about. And do you have a plan to deal with this? Or it's an issue that you're going to watch from the sidelines, you're going to do commentary about it, write thesis? And I mean, I know you are an academic, study it and complain about it.
Look, you must know, Pule, an ordinary Zimbabwean, that there is no revolution without revolutionary theory. Everything that we do in the theaters of our streets and execution of the democratic revolution for the past 2 decades which includes naked contact with danger. I don't know why that we become so forgetful that in these whole trenches, we have done everything possible to resist this regime. That's why all of us, without exception, have been to the different prisons in this country, including maximum prison, have been abducted, have been tortured, have been in the streets of this country. We know what it takes to resist dictatorship. We don't read it from novels and pamphlets. We've exercised this. We, at a certain point, made the resolution that Mugabe must be removed violently. We once took that resolution as young people. So we've been in these trenches. So we don't do experiments. But what I must say is that all those things are product of theory. We have to think tank, we have to plan. What we have made very clear, Bole, is that it is not going to be possible for the resolution of a political party to bind the nation. So it is not possible for us to be sitting and watching without making sure that we're going to resist this thing. It is very clear.
I asked this question, Ostalos, basically because in the past we have heard you make threats, and those threats have come to naught. We have heard threats that if the elections are stolen, you're going to defend this with our blood and stuff like that. And there was no defense of any election. Maybe because you knew it was not stolen. I don't know. We have heard declarations, bold declarations, that President Emerson Mnangagwa was not going to last 5 years in office. Now he wants to make it 7. And therefore, because of that history, because of what we have seen, the theory that you're talking about, that we also study as journalists, we've come to the realization that most of your threats amount to nothing. Why is this one different?
Look, I don't think that most of the pronunciations that we've said have not lasted, but we have made pronunciations that for different reasons, both internal and external, predominantly external. Part of it, and I'll answer that directly, because what the regime has done for the past 20 years, Mhlanga and fellow Zimbabweans, is that it has invested in the harvest of fear. Our people have been petrified to the extent that if an ordinary average Zimbabwean in a commuter omnibus, we went at some point, we're in a commuter omnibus with comrades, and we started talking politics about the crisis in the country. Citizens ignored us. We tried to invite people into the conversation, but the fear by ordinary Zimbabwean that the dreaded Central Intelligence Organization might be there in that commuter omnibus to talk about water, to talk about electricity, to talk about hunger. So it's the regime that is invested in fear. And it is that fear that we must deal with, not just us in the political organization, because the freedom we are fighting for is not the freedom of Nelson Chamisa. It's not the freedom of the leadership of the democratic opposition. It's the freedom of a people. It's the freedom of 97% young people who wake up at the blessing of an empty stomach and a jobless existence. So our investment, which answers your question directly, is investment in the consciousness of the major demographic group in this country, which is young people. We have to. That is where our duty is. And that's why we fell short in making sure that we raise the levels of consciousness in the country to the extent that young people should not be consumed into being given trinkets and trappings. That one artist is given a car and all of them will think that my time will come. It will never come, because the regime is very systematic in picking people to pacify young people, but also to divert them to think that their problems are because they are not good enough. The state has abrogated its obligation to the extent that people are looking forward into criminals. People who must be candidates of Shikurubi are actually the ones being looked for up to by ordinary Zimbabweans. Secondly, the reason why we're removed from parliament and our organization destroyed and us being vilified every day, they want to ensure that people lose confidence in the need for political change in this country. So that is the demon that we must fight. That is the biggest struggle that we must fight, to organize Zimbabweans, to make sure, because look, we have an easier option. The easier option is for us to capitulate and leave this entire thing. But the question that we ask ourselves every time is that if we leave this thing, what will happen to the ordinary average Zimbabweans whose hope and whose future depends on political change? Because in this country, the problem is that the economy is linked to the political. Jobs are linked to the political. The politics is entrenched into every aspect of society. Whether you're in the church, whether you're in the media, whether you are a journalist, you are a soccer star, the poison that is generated from Jongwe building gets into the nerve of every sector of society. If there was a difference between institutions of the state and political parties, if they were not conflated, society would have progressed. But we're not going to progress because the demon of the establishment that is currently misruling us has entrenched and manifested itself across the entire fabric of society. That's why you see there are now headmasters for so and so, teachers for so and so, drivers for so, unemployed so and so. The unemployed youth who must be questioning why they are jobless, they're actually preferring to be the unemployed for the person responsible for their misery and unemployment. So we have to invest in the consciousness, one. We have to build a solid organization to ensure that when we pronounce ourselves, we have the capacity to execute our pronouncement. So that has been the lesson, and that is the intention of what we want to do going forward. That gives us the affirmation that tomorrow is going to be different in terms of the democratic opposition.
Yeah. Some have argued that the reason why people have now moved to these trinkets and the like is that they have tried to put you on the scale. And as they try to do so, they find that most of the times your party has had contradictions. It's because you have failed to adhere to your own constitution, right? And that you have failed to find solutions that deal with contradictions, mostly because of greed. And now people think what they have trusted as an alternative is nothing but a bunch of greedy people who are all there to watch over their own backs and make money. So they are now making their own money because they have realized that running with the hares is as dangerous as running with the hound. So it's better to run with the hound.
I think that is, it will be a wrong characterization of the democratic movement to think that the problems we face is because we've not adhered to our own constitution. Because those who propagated that narrative, and it was repeated in national broadcasters and all the platforms of the regime, predominantly when we said, okay, which constitution are you saying we're not adhering to? We are in the Triple C, they produced the constitution of the MDC Alliance. Because like I said, these are people with dwarf minds and are incapacitated politically. They edited the constitution of the MDC in the first 5-10 pages and its cover page and made it the constitution of the Triple C. When they brought it at court, which again is something that the judiciary was supposed to look into, they brought fake documents, fraudulent documents were lodged in the High Court of this country. We opened the document around page 60, 70, it maintained that this is the name DC Alliance Constitution. So the regime ran with the propaganda that we've been using, that we've been breaching the constitution, which is not our constitution. We had our constitution with governing statutes of the Triple C. It was followed to the letter and the spirit. But the regime wanted us to follow the constitution, which was not our constitution, which is the constitution that they produced in court, which is the constitution of the MDC Alliance. Secondly, I don't think that people should go into politics as a career choice. People should not go into politics as a means of survival politically, as a means to earn a living. If you want money, you must go to the private sector. You have the liberty to make money and to make profit. Politics is an extracurricular activity. We make decisions, of course, to employ people and deploy people into offices to be full-time. It's a decision of the organization that makes that. And those people that are made full-time by the organization, it puts to it the mandate to ensure that they are remunerated by the organization. So I don't think that we should characterize the struggle on the basis of people's personal survival, because that is not the objective. Our objective is to create conducive environment for all of us, regardless of our political persuasions, to go and work, to have jobs, to live a decent life, to go to hospital with medicine, to drive a decent car. You don't have to depend to a political party to be given a car. Chiefs ought to get their vehicles from the state, not donations from an individual. Our soccer teams don't have to remain captured by individuals. They ought to be funded by what is our community teams.
Yeah, it's your team highlighters. Hey?
Of course, they have made sure that they used a twin attack to the team of the nation. All these community teams, because the genuine funders of the team are ordinary people. But those ordinary people are now employed. They are now hungry. And the regime deliberately creates that state of poverty so that it can enslave people. So the crisis that we face, fellow Zimbabweans, is a man-made crisis. It is someone who sit and design hunger. That if we make them hungry, they're going to be dependent. And when they're dependent, we're going to control them.
Do you have a solution for that? Or you, like I said before, we are theorizing about it?
No. We have a solution. The reason why we have set 2023 as an important step for us as the democratic movement,
2023?
2026, is because we've put it in our calendar as the year we have to make sure that we put all these theories, all these experiences, all these lessons, all these aspirations. Because you remember that our struggle is about aspiration of a better society. 2026 becomes to us a year we have to put into action all these aspirations, but also to ensure that when ordinary Zimbabweans find full political expression within our organization and movement, they must also know that it comes with the responsibility to ensure that all the hurdles we've faced, we are able to deal with them collectively as a people. Because what we know and understand is that to us, there are no liberators, as Che Guevara would say. Liberators don't exist. It is us ordinary people who ought to liberate ourselves. Our responsibility as the vanguard of that liberation project, the National Liberation Project, is to ensure that we find the vehicle so that ordinary average Zimbabweans find political expression, but are also able to resist dictatorship as we currently see it.
And you think it's possible to resist dictatorship as you currently see it?
It is clear world over. When they assassinated Thomas Sankara in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso, Compaoré thought that it was not going to be possible for his regime to be removed. It was the same feeling that Mohammed Ben Ali had in Egypt. It was the same feeling that all dictators world over had. But the road of dictatorship has always been the same. That's why we've always hazarded to the current establishment that by setting our country into that levels of uncertainty where you are not changed by the ballot, you are not only setting a precedence and danger to us who are opposing you, you are setting a danger to yourselves. We cautioned Robert Mugabe because in ZANU-PF in 2015, the resolutions of that organization was that Mugabe is going to rule up to the grave. We said to Robert Mugabe, you must let the country decide on the future because you are exiting, not just politically, but naturally. But Mugabe and his sycophants, because there is always a tendency that all dictatorship, especially when they reach their pinnacle, when they reach their exit, they are surrounded by people who are not capable of making logical decisions. And that is the basis of the downfall of every leader. If you look at the contradictions within the current establishment, there are fights between the old cadres of ZANU-PF and the new cadres who have no ideological understanding of ZANU-PF as it was crafted by Herbert Chitep. You can ask Tungwarara about the ideological disposition of ZANU-PF because he is vacuous. He thinks that money decides the politics of the country. And that's why there are contradictions within ZANU-PF itself, because the regime was then captured. The current administration was handed over to those with the money, deviating from the ideological impetus of ZANU-PF as it had Tongo.
Where do you think they were captured, Stalos? What if they're the ones we have captured?
No. If to see that those with money are now dominating Jongwe building, you can look at the policies of government. ZANU-PF, Blessed Mhlanga, is a Marxist-Leninist organization founded on scientific socialism. That is the ZANU of Tongo Ngara. Mthuli Ncube says we are going to continue to back the Bretton Woods institutions. We are going to have a private sector-led economy. The national pace of this country was handed over to a neoliberal. That was not going to be the ZANU-PF of Chitepo. It is not possible. So the policies of the regime, that's why you see on one hand, on the extreme left is Mutswangwa, pronouncing ZANU as a Marxist organization. But on the other hand, the policies of the regime say that we are going to privatize water. That is not the ZANU of Herbert Chitepo. That says we privatize water. Secondly, to say that those money have captured that organization, the ZANU of Chitepo was not going to allow people to be dislodged of their land in Chilonga. Because that ZANU would have known that at the center of the liberation project was the issue of the land and the economy. The current circus that you see where Chinese are allowed to mine in a national park will not have happened to the ZANU of Herbert Chitepo, because it knew that at the center of socialist struggle is protection of the land, it is environment. The ZANU that says we are friends with China and Beijing will not have let our lithium being ravaged the extent that is happening, will not have allowed people to go to Christmas Park in Mutare and begin to start to exploit under that mountain. It would have preserved it, because all socialists are revolutionaries. They know that they have to protect the environment. Lastly, the ZANU of Chitepo will not have allowed the amputation of the constitution, because it knows that revolutionaries ought to be produced by securing the mandate from the people. The current establishment is being run like a Korokoza organization. That's why the predominant leadership now is those that are involved in informal sector mining without any health hazards. Look at how many people have lost their lives in their mines in Midlands. Look at the chaos that is happening. The ZANU of Chitepo and fellow Zimbabweans would not have allowed our country to lose 1.2 billion on illicit outflow of gold alone per year. That was not going to be allowed, because at the center of the Marxist-Leninist revolution is the upliftment of the working class. Who are the working class? The working class are the poor. Who are the poor? The poor are the oppressed. In the Zimbabwean context, as was characterized by the liberation struggle, the oppressed were black people. It was the majority, what they would call Kutsarushinji. That agenda was about upliftment and the empowerment of ordinary people, not political elites. It has never been the agenda of the socialist revolution. So it is clear for us who observe that organization from outside that it was captured, and we can only wish for those same individuals within the organization to take it back to its founding principles.
Douglas Mwanzora said pretty much the same, but in parallel, he said the opposition of Morgan Tsvangirai would not have allowed parliament to be hijacked like it has been done. He said the opposition of Morgan Tsvangirai, this was also Eddie Cross, who said Morgan Tsvangirai as an opposition leader would not have abandoned the political party. He was going to fight and reclaim it. They say that the opposition of today has been hijacked. This is Mwanzora said that by student activists who have failed to move from student activism and politics into the realm of mature opposition politics that can deliver an alternative. They argue that the opposition of today is bereft of ideas and a plan to take over power, and instead it is full of rhetoric and grandstanding. Let's draw parallel.
Look, those two, if you had made other references, would have talked about President Tsvangirai may so rest in power. Those two lack the moral probity to talk about Morgan Tsvangirai at all. They've no probity, they've no local standard to talk about President Tsvangirai, because they're an antithesis of what President Tsvangirai represented. So they lack that, and I would never, we would never as a movement try to sanitize by engagement on the character, on the person of President Tsvangirai by those individuals. There are people in this country who still hold the moral authority to talk about President Tsvangirai, and those are not the characters to talk about President Tsvangirai. But there is a question that obviously I must respond to say, now, what would have President Tsvangirai done? So much has happened within the democratic alternative being assaulted. He was there. We fought just like we fight today. We don't capitulate because we know that's the nature of any struggle. We also don't apportion blame. We pick ourselves up and fight because we know that it is a fight. It is never going to be a walk in the park. People will compromise, like these said individuals. They went for personal aggrandizement and glory. Once you see an individual, one of the things we were taught when we were young people, once you see a leader and the individual starting to talk about maturity, you must know that they are conscious. Once someone saying, no, I'm going to engage with the regime because that's what's maturity, you must know that they're already in the pockets of the regime. The regime doesn't sleep. It uses 5 things that we call smiles within the democratic opposition. First, they deploy sex. If they don't capture you there, they will deploy money. Then don't capture you there, they will deploy intimidation. If they don't capture you there, they will deploy manipulation. If they don't capture you there, they'll make sure that they execute you. So we know the modus operandi of our opponents. And we know the signs of those that have been captured. The only thing we do is to look at what point of which element of this mice have been deployed. So all of them, without exception, all of them, they can hallow, they can say things, they can characterize us, they can label us, they can say all things. But what we can only do is to say, this one, they made sure that they give him or her these particular issues. So we are not surprised. We are not shocked. What we will never do is to let those things deviate us from the central objective of our struggle, which is to have democracy. And don't think that we're going to get there able-bodied politically. We're going to get there with a lot of assault, with a lot of name calling. ZANU-PF once said that it's shocking that the people who today would want to talk about Morgan Tsvangirai are the people who gave him headaches. They said Morgan Tsvangirai was a sellout. They said Morgan Tsvangirai was against the land, forgetting that Mugabe was in support of white people maintaining land. It is Morgan Tsvangirai in the ZCTU, the labor movement, and the students that they are vilifying today, who said to the war veterans, the willing buyer, willing seller project is expiring. We must grab land. It was never a ZANU-PF project. Mugabe hijacked the land project after he had a fallout with the Queen in England. Mugabe was pronounced and told by the war veterans after being given political consciousness by us that the agenda of the liberation struggle, you must not forget, was about land. It's us who made sure that we give them that ideological reminder. They said to Mugabe, we are going to dethrone you like the way we throned you.
So you are saying that you are responsible for the violent land seizures?
No. We were responsible for beginning the conversation about land in this country. And when there was violence, we unequivocally, and we've always maintained that position, that the nature and process, the violent nature of the land reform project is not something that we've advocated for. We've been very clear, but we were clear ideologically that the land must be given to black people, to the majority of the people, and that the willing buyer, willing seller project had not been a sufficient policy to resolve the disadvantaged black majority of the land. It's us. It was not ZANU-PF, because at that time, Mugabe was actually dining with the Queen of England. That was the position of ZANU-PF. We had to remind them. But Mugabe then came at convenience and made sure that the process is violent, is unaccountable, it's not transparent. That's why land was then not given to ordinary Zimbabwean. It was now given to political elites. That's not what we advocated for. We advocated for the land to be given to ordinary average Zimbabweans, not to political elites.
I want to turn to you, Ostalos, and say some people have looked at you and said you can be the future president of this country and you have qualities that can make you president. Are you thinking about that now?
Look, that is not the objective of the National Democratic Project. The democratic struggle to us has never and will never be about occupying positions. The reason why we have remained within the democratic movement under very difficult circumstances is because, to the credit, the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Union, as was led by Tsvangirai, through its various institutions like LEDRIS, the International Socialist Organization, as was led by Mnyaradzi Gwisai, did so much justice to our generation by preparing us and making us understand that the struggle for freedom can never be a struggle where the obsession is preoccupation of positions. That's why we can still execute the struggle comfortably without being in parliament. Because someone invested in grounding us ideologically. Because it's as if they knew that at some point there are going to be contradictions which are going to be narrowed to positions, to trinkets, and to survival. It's as if they knew that there will come a time where our fidelity to the struggle is going to be tested.
But don't you have ambition? Don't you have dreams? I mean, I aspire to be the editor of, or to be the editor in chief of Alpha Media Holdings. It is only normal for when someone becomes a teacher to want to be a headmaster, or when you get employment to also become the manager and probably the CEO.
But a political party now is different from bureaucratic institutions like the ones you lead. A political party functions on the basis of the collective agenda. So your individual objectives and intentions must be connected to the collective's objective.
I mean, we've heard that. Where politicians have said, no.
There's no one. It is not about kuti vanhu vari kuti in our view. That's not what us is all about. To us is to say, what will give me comfort as an individual? It is when we reach the destination, our station of choice. Because you see what happens, Bule. If we are to have a democratic breakthrough in this country, everyone is able to flourish. Whether you go to the private sector, whether you serve in government, whether you serve in the academy, where some of us in the academia, where some of us are interested in, you be comfortable there, because in that moment, everyone is able to survive. So what was done to us and what is done to us every day in the execution of our struggle is to remove us into aspirations that are personal, into aspirations that are collective. So our conversation ceases to see politics as somewhere where you have to assimilate to that. I must be a spokesperson, become a secretary general, and become this. No. That's not how we function. We are trained and deployed to understand that you play a role according to the task given to you at that material time. And when you think that you are not available, you exercise your freedom to excuse yourself, to say, I've been given this responsibility. I don't think that I'm capable enough, or I'm comfortable as an individual, either for personal reasons or for professional ones. So we've been removed from that realm to look at politics as some hierarchy of some sort, where you think that the intention and objective is probably to become a president. I think that anyone can be a president, because being a president is just about going around, opening sessions there, giving a speech there, doing that. So that can't be the objective of our struggle. That's not how we've been prepared. The objective of our struggle is to have a solid team to govern. We've hazarded to President Chamisa every time when we meet to say, Comrade President, what is our turnaround program if we are to govern this country? Looking at the mess that is in the country, domestic debt of this country is at more than 14 billion, at more than 20 billion now.
It's 23 billion.
So with a domestic debt at 23 billion, the question we ask ourselves is to say, what kind of a team do we need to have an economic turnaround? Because there's going to be lack of patience if we are to govern this country tomorrow by ordinary Zimbabweans, because these are people who've been disenfranchised for more than 2 decades, for more than 4 decades, I mean. So the expectations are very high. So the question we face every day is to say, what is the qualitative team that we are able to deploy to turn around the economy, to retain the hope that people have on government and the trust that is needed? So when that becomes the occupation, it is not possible to consume around who amongst us becomes the lead. We have pronounced ourselves as a movement to say, where we stand right now, judging from the aspirations of ordinary people, judging from the capabilities of the individual, judging from what we think is a leadership within the organization in the democratic alternative, judging from the conversations we've had in different spaces with friends of the democratic alternative, we think that President Chamisa remains the best foot forward for the movement. We have made that choice. Fortunately, that choice associated with aspirations of ordinary people. There might be issues that people say as an organization, when you come, we want you to sort there and sort there and sort there. That's why we are comfortable where we are as a movement and as a people. And we progress pretty much very well. And we are very comfortable where we are. And we are able to say amongst us, people deploy and redeploy to say this one is going to play this role, this one is going to play this role, because we know that the occupation, I was the spokesperson, deputy spokesperson of the CCC. A new organization would deploy another spokesperson and say, because of where you are, we think that you can play there. And I'll play my role there. Because what matters is not me. What matters is the agenda that we have as a movement. And all these are nuts and vital cogs of the person whom we put as the president. He is there because of these anchors that are there, which includes the leadership collective, which includes ordinary people who gave him the mandate. So without those, the center will not be able to stand. So you realize that at the end of the day, it becomes a weaving system that creates who we are, not necessarily individuals. Yes, people might see certain individuals. For me, to be able to do my role as the deputy spokesperson and Fadza as the spokesperson, you'd realize that we would do the work, but there is an engine, a communications department, bureaucrats within that department, but also provincial spokespersons across the country who give you the information. So you won't be able to do a press conference without the spokesperson from Mad North who tells you what's happening in Binga, but also the expertise that come to give us the technical information that we need to pronounce the position of the organization. These departments, whether it's welfare department, is the labor department, economic department, international relations, all of them that were speaking on their behalf would make us to do the work that we were doing. You might see me, but you are just the conveyor belt of not your own ideas, of not yourself, but the ideas of the collective, but more importantly, the ideas of millions of ordinary Zimbabweans.
Ostalo, some people have asked this question, and I find it that you should answer this question. That they say that you have not held any professional occupation or job in your life, yet you live this life. You are on someone's payroll, and they allege that you could actually have been bought by the ruling elites, and you are just wasting people's time making believe in a mirage. Now, where do you get your money, Ostalo?
Look, I've suffered this abuse from my enemies because these are private issues. But because you're a public figure, I've had no problems and qualms in expressing that which is private for the purposes of the benefit of the public, which we represent. The first thing that I must correct, Pule, is that when I left college, my first job was at Econet. So I never left college. Yes, I joined the unemployed at some time without having a job. But I was employed by High Life Foundation. That's why I got my job. I worked as a professional, earning a decent salary above poverty that I'm like, right? When I left and went to the civic society, had a contract with the programs director of the Zimbabwe National Students Union, I had again a salary above poverty that I'm line. I never had my first car when I was in the party. I bought my first car from a comrade called Lenin Chisaira, who was going to Europe on some scholarship to study. I gave him part of the deposits from my savings because all this information is there from my first bank, which was Stuart, to my second bank, which is still my bank today, which is Stanbic, because the regime accesses these things. We know that. They go there, they see our transactions. Now, when I went to the party, I knew because we were made to be aware that the lifestyle that we're living as people, because we're the working class. We knew that when we go to the party, we would need to, one of the things we're cautioned is to change our lifestyle. That now, because you're in the party, you won't be able to continue eating sadza Kwamazinyane in Bulawayo and at Gawa. We had to change our lifestyle because we knew that now we are no longer professionals. Now, the question of how then I survived since then, that's why now I'm completing my PhD with the University of Free State, because one, it allows me to do consultants. If you look at the institution called the Catalyst Center, it was our creation where we are able to exercise our professional mandate. The bank statements of all that work is documented because transactions of that nature are processed formally within the banking system in our country. And that's how we earn a living. We don't earn a living through politics. We don't earn a living through political activism, because if we wanted to earn through politics, we knew that there was salary in parliament. We knew that there were benefits in parliament, but we left all those because we knew that our points of survival will not be twinned to salaries in parliament, which, by the way, they are complaining about. We don't know that how much they get and so forth, but we've seen them complaining about that. So we were trained to have an understanding that you have to do your work outside your contribution within the organization so that you don't become a burden, so that you are also not able to survive. And the regime, like anyone who suspect, it will give you the money, it will give you all those things. So we don't survive on the basis of politics. In fact, politics makes it difficult for us to continue with our professional duties because very few people. I had a consultancy I was doing for an organization in Southern Africa. So when I was doing that work, part of the things that came to be debated is that, no, we hear that you are in a political party, right? And I said, I'm giving you my expertise on the mapping that you want me to do, not on the basis of my identity as a member of a political party, but on the basis of the CV that I've given you and the experience that I've had of over 10 years of my working experience outside the democratic movement. So it's not easy. You have to navigate that terrain. You can ask those in the legal profession. When you're a lawyer and you're in a party, it makes it difficult even to do some of your work. So even those in industry, whether you have trucks and so forth, when we're in the youth, I'll tell you this, Pule, we opened a butchery somewhere in Chitungiza there to try and survive, because you have savings, but you also want to multiply that money. Everyone is talking about entrepreneurship. I mean, to the credit of the regime, the project collapsed, right? We couldn't run it. There was no electricity, and we accepted that, no, we might not be good entrepreneurs. So that's why I sticked into the vocation of providing services of me as an academic and provide service that will pay me for me to earn a living. And that's how I survive. And I don't think that the regime can offer me money that can be satisfactory for me to abandon the struggle. I have easier routes. If I decide to say, look, I don't think, if I think that I'm tired, I'll exit and go to the academia or go to institutions and work. I can work in the region, I can work internationally. And with the friends that we have, Bule, because of our vocation as professionals and leaders of society, our friends who have capacity to the extent that if I have a car breakdown today, Strive Masiwa used to tell us this when we were youngsters at Econet, to say, yeah, this saying that you used to speak, to say your network is your net worth. So we were taught when we were young students within that Joshua Nkomo Scholarship Foundation, when we were students at the University of Zimbabwe, they trained us to be able to create networks that will be able to transform our net worth. I have people, and I've always challenged the regime to say, look, you can't challenge me to say, we saw you driving a certain vehicle. I can change cars every day purely for security reasons, because I've got friends. I can call a friend and say, I need a car to go there. They'll give me. That is my network. It changes my net worth, right? It is not possible for a person of my nature with greatest respect and greatest humility to be found where ZANU-PF want me to be. Because when they recalled us from parliament with their friends within us, they thought that we're going to suffer. They thought we were going to have problems that are personal. But we've got friends. Some of them are billionaires. So I don't think that logically, if I remove myself from myself and observe myself and say, this is a guy who's able to call someone who's a multimillionaire, so how will this guy sleep hungry? I don't think it's possible, right? But what they want is for you to go and disclose, to say, no, a friend of mine who is in business gave me this, so that they go after these people because they want the organization to be bankrupt. They want those who are in the forefront of democratic struggle to suffer personally so that they are not able to survive. But we know, we were prepared. We've got the sufficient infrastructure and architecture to make us stay strong and execute our struggle without being compromised.
Sasiziba mina ngifuna ukubonga ukuthi abalaleli bethu ukhuluma lawo namhla Free Talk. Sizokubonga ukuthi uhambe kuhle, zabonana i-2026 nge yebo. Before I let you go, Siziba, a friend of mine that I've known for a long time, I'll just allow you under 2 minutes, Baba. 2 minutes kuphela ba. Yeah. Uzokhuluma izinto ziphuma enhliziyo yakho. Ukuthi ufuni abantu eZimbabwe baboneni, bacabangeni, bazohamba phambili.
Thank you very much, Pule. Thank you to Heart and Soul and the FNF for supporting these important initiatives for us to find expressions and communicate with Zimbabweans. 2026 has been a very tough year for all Zimbabweans, ourselves included, but it is a struggle and nothing lasts forever, fellow Zimbabweans. We'll get there. It's not an easy struggle. It's a difficult journey, but we owe it to those that departed, the Lenmo Jongwes, the Morgan Tsvangrais, the Beta Chokuru-Ramas, the Tonde Raindiras of this world. We owe them to finish the unfinished business of democratization. And at no point are we going to abandon this struggle. We remain committed to the realization of a democratic developmental state anchored on the pillars of justice, freedom, and solidarity. Nyabonga, tinotenda, twalumba. Thank you very much.
I mean, you could repeat that in Ndebele. Ngicela ukhulume isiNdebele. Mina ngiyafunda isiNdebele. Mina angisomndebele. Asingiyafunda. Ufuna ufunda ukhuluma isiNdebele. It's important for all of us as Zimbabweans to find each other in terms of culture, language, so that we can feel for each other the pain instead of us stepping back to issues of tribalism, issues of regionalism, and issues of political division.
Thank you very much, Pule, for that gesture. It appeals to my conscience and to the conscience of all Zimbabweans. Ilizwe ngelethu sonke baba. Fanele siyakhe ilizwe lethu sibambene. Abantu abafunde. We have said this to the regime. Wonke umuntu kafundisa iNdebele, kafundisa iShona. Ngenxa yokuthi ulimi ngolwethu. Ungahamba eChina abantu bafunda ngesiChina, i-engineering. So kufanele sifunde njengabeZimbabweans, sibambane. Ilizwe esifuna uliyakha ngelomuntu wonke Mhlanga. Asolizwe lamaShona, asolizwe lamaNdebele, asolizwe lamaTonga, asolizwe lamakhalanga, ilizwe lamaZimbabwean. Okwumuva esakubonayo ukuthi abantu babe divided on the basis of those things. Thina kufanele siyakhe ilizwe lonke, and yikho thina njengoba ukhokhele sikwanisa ukukhuluma indimi zonke. Nxa singena eBhinga sithi Murikabotho, nxa singena koBulawayo linjani, nxa singena eHarare sithi Makadini. Ngenxa yokuthi njengoba ukhokhele kufanele sitshengise abantu beZimbabwe ukuthi ilizwe esifuna ukuliyakha njengoba uNkomo wakhuluma ukuthi ilizwe lonke silifuna ukuthi libambane. Siyabonga ukusinika leli thuba thina njengesizwe seZimbabwe sithi ilizwe sizalikhulula. Ngiyabonga.
Hayi, ngiyakuhlonipha baba Siziba. Zimbabweans, this is our country. We build this country together. And this platform, the Free Talk, in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation, has been anchored on the basis that we need each other as a people. We need to talk through our problems together, and we need to find solutions together. And as Ostalos Siziba says, superior logic is what we need, not superior fist. Mina ugama lami umdala Blessed Mhlanga. Umdala wodwa unkomo. Mina ngudala.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the support that you have given us throughout this year, and we hope that you continue to support us. And this, unfortunately, will be the last episode of Free Talk in 2025. And there was no better way to end it than having this amazing conversation here, that we look at what the young people can do to build this nation going forward, and how also the older generations can pour into the young people so that their experience, their wealth of knowledge can also be captured by the young, not just as the DNA that is passed from one generation to the other through reproduction or recreation, but also sharing nuggets and issues that are captured in the mind for posterity. Now, we encourage you, this call to action, comrades, friends, brothers and sisters, those who believe in the work that we do as Darabi, kindly subscribe so that you promote the work that we do. Just take a few seconds, just take a few minutes. We are on 106,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel. We are on 900,000 followers on our Facebook pages. Take a moment to press the follow button, the like button, so that we grow this platform and we are able to keep the lights on. Amadzangu, janya, subscribe, landela. Right, thank you very much. Ostalos Siziba. Wish you the best and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Restoration of fundamental freedom, restoration of discipline and order in the country. We can't have a country where people are subjected to abuses by drug lords.